Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Krashy, and today we're going to be diving into a jungle tier list a little bit late for the V0.17.3 patch. Now, the reason I wanted to do this is because we're about to get the big item overhaul in like a week, and I think it'll be interesting to see how much the items change and then how much it affects the tier list. I do think that base stats on heroes are changing. I think that probably that some of the like a lot of the items are going to be like drastically different. I think the entire game is going to feel pretty different in terms of itemization. Some things will stay reasonably similar, but we're going to see how it affects it. So this is the tier list that I've built out, and I'm going to go through each step and explain it. So we're going to go straight top to bottom and go from there. So Zarus is incredibly strong. He has the insane pick potential to close out games and secure objectives before even breaking like an even team fight, just because of his like high mobility in his cage, right? You build like a move speed build on him traditionally with like Berserker's Axe, and you have Ice Scorn Talons, and you have his dash, and you have, you know, like Tectonic Mallet, and if you're kind of going in that direction. And he just has a lot of pick potential. His jungle is consistent. He can clear, he can do objectives, you know, fairly well. He has his shield for like Primal Fangtooth, so even whenever that's beating on you, he's just really good. And he also has infinite power scaling with his ultimate, so he's just good, man. He combos super well with a lot of heroes, and he's just like what I think at like a competitive level and even like a solo queue level, like one of the best junglers. Now, as far as solo queue goes, and this tier list is like primarily solo queue focused, although I do have like competitive opinions and reservations. Chimera is like the best jungler for that, right? Like, he just dismantles uncoordinated play. Like, you can just invade with him, you can be a menace with him. He's really easy. Like, I almost think that Chimera is problematic, to be completely honest. At a high level play, he's super strong too. He's just not like, I don't think his priority is as high, but like if you pick Chimera and you're learning the game, or you pick Chimera and you're trying to master the jungle, like it's going to be a fast track, right? Like he's pretty easy to get into. You can build him with some good damage items like Sky Splitter. You can build him, you know, very tanky. Build him with the Overlord. Basilisk is currently also like a kind of broken item. He's just that guy. He can solo objectives. You know, there's not much pressure on you when you're just on an objective because you don't really take that much damage. Chimera is just incredibly strong. We all know this. Now, going down to the A plus tier, we have Crunch. Crunch, I think, has been being slept on a little bit. I mean, he's strong, right? He's just really strong early to mid game. It can kind of get the game rolling. He does fall off, you know, pretty hard in the late game. It gets a little bit harder for him to kind of get those like isolated like 1v1 combo knockup kind of, you know, bullshit that he does. But he is incredibly strong, and even in team fight, you know, if he's not the only like main primary frontliner, he can still get a lot of work done. He can peel really well, so he's got that kind of going for him, where other bruisers might lack a little bit on that. But yeah, he's pretty solid. He's really strong. I think he farms really fast, and he kind of progresses the game in a pretty substantial way. He can invade well. He's got really high mobility. He kind of does a little bit of like a little bit of everything, so really solid. As for Kallari is like pub stomper, but also really devastating in coordinated play as well. Kallari has the absolute potential to get fed and completely dominate a game. I kind of don't think this is ever going to change. I think that Kallari will probably always be reasonably high on a tier list. And at times, I think like it's the skill issue with Kallari. Like, people think that she's useless at times, and I really think that she's pretty much always going to be consistently strong. There have been patches where she felt like really weak, but even then you could always pick her and snowball a game. So I think that Kallari just has that like, you know, dismantle the laning phase kind of thing. Like, you can you can just screw over people, and you know, once you get Kallari online and once she gets a little fed, then it's really hard to keep up. You don't really know where she is. She kind of appears out of nowhere. It's hard to react to that really quickly, and Kallari can absolutely dominate a game in the solo queue sense. As for Kwang, I think Kwang is really consistent. Kwang, and you're going to see a theme. I'm just going to go ahead and note it out to you. Outside of Greystone, and we'll talk about him a little bit, you have Kwang and Rampage are a higher tier than Richter and Steel, and Kwang is like a bruiser tank. Rampage is kind of like a bruiser tank. Now, here's the thing: you can build him full tank, absolutely, and you mostly do, but it's like the way that his kit plays. He's got a lot of disruption. He does bring, you know, a good bit of damage to the team, and also he's magic damage, which is like a nice change up if your team kind of needs it in the jungle. He's solid. He's really solid brimstone jungler. You know, you build him for the Fire Blossom, and you just get things moving. You bring a lot of CC to the table. He's really good. He's got really good initiation, you know, good pick potential with his sword and the tether, and yeah, really consistent, strong pick. I think it's a little hard to solo carry with him, but he brings a lot to the table for sure. Rampage is kind of the same thing. You know, they've kind of brought him more into the bruiser spotlight a little bit, so you can still do like Overlord start into full tank, you can do Basilisk start into full tank, which I think is a little bit more of the appropriate way to play him just because of the haste. You really like haste on this hero. Or you can build him full tank and he still does really well. You know, he you really can just build him full tank. You're relying on teammates a little bit more at that point, but yeah, really good damage potential, good CC. His entire game, it feels solid. Like his early to mid game is strong. He's got good gank potential. His invades are solid. His farming is solid. His late game scaling is solid. Rampage is very very strong. I think, you know, looking at the S tier and the A plus tier, like these are like the best junglers to me, hands down. Not to say that there are other amazing picks, but like for sure, if you're picking one of these six, you're going to be doing really great. So, all right, let's look at the true tanks. Right, we got Richter and Steel. Richter, you know, the only reason they're knocked down a peg is that it's hard to solo carry with them, and they're a little bit slow. You have to kind of like full sequence your jungle so you can get a Brimstone online. But outside of that, dude, you scale a Richter into mid late game, and you've got an amazing tank. He brings so much to the table. It's hard to outsmite him. He brings so much CC, but he's all reliant on teams. So I love playing Richter in a competitive sense. I really can't stand playing him in solo queue personally, and that doesn't knock down his viability. It's just you're very much so relying on your team. He doesn't have crazy initiate either, so you are relying on your team so much when you play Richter. But his jungle is good. He's got hook and hunt combo, which is like a really big smite essentially. It's kind of like you're in control of that big damage spike, which is nice when securing objectives. And Richter is just a consistently very strong tank. Steel's the same way. Steel is the only jungler in the whole jungle list. I mean, outside of Iggy, but we'll talk about Iggy. Steel is the only jungle in the whole jungle list that's not actually categorized as a jungle. He's only categorized as an offlaner, which I think is interesting. He's really good. He's really good. He's got amazingly strong smites. He brings so much CC to the table. His health pool is huge, so it's not like you're just going to walk in and kill him. And yeah, he's just consistent. It's the same thing though. You know, Brimstone start, so you got to get your full sequence off, and it's slow. It can be very slow. The problem with tank junglers is that like other faster junglers, you look up at S and A plus tier, can influence the game a lot more quickly potentially. So if your laners don't look and recognize that you're a tank jungler and play the early game intentionally slow to let your whole team scale, then you could fall behind and just lose the game just because you're a tank jungle, which sucks. But really consistent. He's got really good ganks. He's a really solid jungler, very solid jungler. Now Greystone, the only reason Greystone comes down here, and I was going to talk about, said I was going to talk about him, is because he just doesn't have any ganks, man. Like this hero just like can't really gank. You can jump out, you can do a little bit of damage, but they just kind of walk away from you. So when you pick Greystone jungle, you end up playing the jungle 1v1 a lot, where you're not really jumping into lanes too often. You should, but you're not going to jump into lanes too often. You're like stealing farm and invading and jumping over walls, and you're being a nuisance because you're hard to kill and you can scale him. But also he's got a few different ways you can build him. You can build him very damage heavy. You can build him like just consistent like HP bruiser, you know, Basilisk Overlord kind of build. You can build him very tanky even with the Basilisk. So you can go full tank. You can go like tank with Basilisk. You can do a lot with this hero. So I think he's a great jungler. It's a different kind of jungle play style where you're playing the jungle 1v1, you're looking for invades, you're looking to steal farm, and you're not really ganking all that much because his ganks aren't that great. Feng Mao, man, this hero feels really broken to me. But it's just a little slower to start, and I do think that he's naturally a better offlaner. I don't think it would be really hard for me to put him in A+. I'm personally feeling him in middle of A tier right now. His early game is just really slow, and then you start getting your Chalice online, you get your Omen online, and you start just hyper farming and snowballing a game. So if Feng Mao gets kills, if Feng Mao scales, he's such a scaling hero. His late game is so crazy. Feng Mao at times, I don't feel like I'm a very great Feng Mao. I think I do okay on him, but sometimes he feels like the best hero in the game, and it's so stressful to play against him. He just dives back on, kills someone instantly, and then dips out, and it's really frustrating. So Feng Mao, definitely a case to be made for him to be an A+ tier as well. But it's just a little slow to start. That's, you know, really my reservations. And it's kind of the same thing with like Shinbi and Countess. Like they're not bad by any means, but they're not amazing. They have like really good potential to carry games, really good potential to just farm their butt off. Both of them can farm very, very well. But you know, they're just strong, right? Like Countess, you know, she's got you know, really good snowball potential, or you can build the kind of like bruisery lifesteal build that's been going around on her, and she just kind of brings a little bit more of like a bruiser presence, you know, divey backline presence without having to explode somebody and be too squishy, because you do want to kind of bring some of that to the table. So I actually think her bruiser build's a little bit better for jungle, and same thing for Shinbi. Like, you can build either one of Countess and Shinbi for like an assassin build where you're just looking to dip in, get a little damage, and then, like, you know, fade away through the Shinbi ult, or, you know, execute with the Countess ult, or you can build them both bruiser, which I think both of them works just fine. It just depends. So that gives them a little bit more viability because of the way that you can build them. And the only reason, because I actually moved her up, the only reason I have Sereth at A tier, because I am very, very close to believing that she is probably the worst jungler in the game, is because of solo queue. It's the only reason. I'm going to be very intentionally clear here about Sereth. She's not a good jungler, but she can get incredibly fed and win games. I do it. Everyone does it. When I put her low, people call me crazy because we've all seen what she can do in an uncoordinated solo queue setting. So I guess I suppose that brings her viability up, but she's not good. She's not a good jungler. She's really weak. Her early game is not good, and she scales okay, right? She scales okay. So I don't know. I'm trying to give a little bit more love to Sereth because, you know, maybe I'm just really biased against her. She's got a lot of potential, but I don't know. I think she's pretty weak in the jungle, but the ability to solo carry it's there. It's absolutely there. Now for the B tier, Grux, you know, Grux is phenomenal. So it's like a little hard to put him here because in a lot of ways in solo queue, I would rather play someone like Grux over, say, Richter or Steel. But Grux is definitely not as good a jungler as Richter or Steel. He's just absolutely not. His kit is not built for jungling. He's got super long cooldowns. You end up using your CC, and it's just weird. It's not great. But yeah, you can play him. You can scale him. You can bring him into fights, and I feel like his ganks are they're super, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Telegraphed. They're really easy to see coming. They're really easy to know exactly what he's going to do. So I don't know. He's just not a great jungler. And Sevarog, my issue with Sevarog jungle is it's actually kind of just fine. I just hate sitting in the jungle and stacking on him. He's definitely scaling, so it's got the same issue that other tanks have, but you have to, like, be slow and, like, wait and then stack. You know, you can't just, like, clear the jungle like you normally would, where you're just, like, running around and clearing. It feels like there's, like, a lag to it, and personally, I'm just not a big Sevarog fan. I don't really like playing him, and in jungle, I really don't like playing him, so there's that. Now, the reason I put Iggy on the tier list is because he can jungle, and I wanted to bring Sereth up a little bit. I didn't really want to have like some decent junglers like in C tier, like Sevarog and Grux and Sereth or whatever. So I threw Iggy on the list. He can jungle. It's awful. Don't do it. And those are my thoughts. So there you have it. Like I said, I'm trying to keep my competitive biases off the table a little bit, but they're definitely there, and there is just like some truth to this. Like, some people are gonna think Sereth is just the best jungler. I promise you, she's not. I promise you, she's not. She's just not that great. But she can get the job done. A lot of these heroes can get the job done. I think if you're looking, you know, A and A plus, like, honestly, every jungler in this game is like decently viable. You can win games with anyone on this list in the jungle. Absolutely, you can. So, but there's levels and strengths to it. Drop a like on the video, subscribe for future predecessor content. I definitely do appreciate it. As always, be sure to be kind of over. Tell someone you love them, and I'll see you in the next video.